Hey guys, David Doucette here, Architect Exam Prep. Just wanted to give you a heads up, let you know that the ARE podcast is sponsored by Architect Exam Prep, and that is myself and Eric. If you need any study materials, head over to our website, architectexamprep.com. You can check out our materials there. And also, if you need coaching, we offer that as well. Whether you need it for one division or you want to jump all the way in and join our Platinum coaching program, you'll find all the information on our website, architectexamprep.com. With that said, let's get into the podcast. ARE Podcast, episode number 60.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. ARE Podcast, where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the ARE Podcast. My name is David Doucette, joined by our co-host, Eric Corey-Fried. Eric, how are you?
Great. Hi, everybody.
And today we have a topic that comes up weekly, if not sometimes daily, in our Platinum coaching group, and it is, does second guessing keep you from passing? So we're asking you the question, and we're going to discuss it. Does second guessing keep you from passing? And we're going to talk about that right now. So I know Eric has a lot to say on this topic because it's probably one of the most common threads that almost every candidate has in common or has issues dealing with. So let me throw it to you, Eric.
Well, second guessing, by definition, to me, this is where you've read through the question, you chose an answer, and then you've saved time at the end of the test only to go back and then change those answers. That's kind of a classic example of textbook candidate second guessing, right? They think they're being responsible, they're doing a good thing, they're going back and checking their answers, and in doing so, they end up changing them, right? On second glance or third glance, now they look at the question and they think, no, I think my gut was wrong, let me change it. And what you and I have found anecdotally is that generally speaking, those that go back and second guess and change their answers tend to fail. And those that kind of stick to their guns and say, no, I think it's fine, and don't change their answer, they tend to pass. Now, obviously, we have no data from the actual test if, how this works, but I can tell you anecdotally from thousands of candidates in our coaching program that have said, I listened to you, Eric and David, I didn't change my answers and I passed, or, yeah, I went back and changed a whole bunch of answers and I failed. That seems to be the prevailing theme.
And there's so much to unpack here with this changing the second answer, changing your answers. The first thing, and I just thought of this as you were describing this, just the simple way you described it, the changing the answers doesn't sound like a professional in a sense. And I'm not saying, professionals don't change answers, but just the way you described it, if you think of this in a professional situation, think your boss or your manager, whoever, you guys are you're in a meeting, right? You're in this 1 hour meeting and you reach all these decisions. And then near the end of the meeting, your boss is kind of looking at the decisions and be like, I want to change this one. Mechanical guy, I want to change this one. Electrical guy, I think I need to change this one. Like, it just doesn't sound professional in a sense. And I think we can apply that certainly to the exam here.
And what's interesting is the reasons, I think, why people do this, right? Now, obviously, the test is stressful. It's normal to be nervous. Everybody's nervous taking the tests. And so you're fueled by adrenaline, right? And that kind of fight or flight response is pulsing through your veins. And so, before you hit that submit button and submit all of your answers essentially to NCARB, you want to make sure it's right. That's completely normal, completely healthy and reasonable thing to do. The trouble is that you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're second guessing and changing answers for the wrong reasons. And we can get into those reasons, but I just want to acknowledge that I totally get why people second guess. It's perfectly sensible, reasonable thing to do. It just unfortunately doesn't work.
And that is one of our tips in our coaching program is just resist the urge to second guess. And it is hard. It takes practice. It's not natural to resist that urge. So we have to work on it. And that is, as we've talked about before, all 6 divisions retakes candidates score lower. And this is based on NCARB's own feedback or results. Candidates score lower the second time around. And there's a few reasons that we can speculate on that, but one of them is second guessing, or they're trying to do things different than they did before, whatever it might be. And we've seen this in our coaching program, but we've also seen candidates who coming up to exam number 3 or the third retake, the advice is just don't change anything. Just don't change answers and try it and see what happens. And they come back and they pass.
Yeah, but if you're on your third retake, I mean, we've met people that have taken the same test 8 times before they come to us for help. And I wish they came sooner, but what we've seen is that when people show us their score reports from past attempts, the second retake, their scores definitely go down. In fact, NCARB shows this in their by the numbers report every year. Retakes tend to be worse by 10 to 15 percentage points. But by the third one, they're now so out of touch with the reality of the test. They don't know what the answer is, right? Because what you're thinking is, in your head, you're thinking, well, the first test I remember this question, I answered A. And then the second time I took the test, because I failed, I assumed everything I know is wrong. And so I just started willy-nilly changing answers and second guessing. So this time I answered B. And now by the third time, they don't even know what to believe. And so our advice to everybody is, look, if you're retaking a test, imagine you've never taken it before. Go in as blank slate and fresh as you can. Try to avoid that trap of, well, the first time I took it, I did this. Second time I did this. All of that is just going to overstimulate that overthinking gland that you have in your body and in your brain that's gonna kind of take you off course.
Which is all, I think, as you mentioned earlier, all of this is normal. We've been doing this long enough to know a lot of these urges and things we think like it's all normal. Like nobody's being abnormal. It's just kind of learning to control your brain and really make it work for you to give you the most positive test experience. And it takes practice. Nobody's going to do this on their first division, their first ever exam. Most likely not. I mean, it takes practice. And as Eric, you say, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So with each exam we take, we learn from it and we grow from it, and we just keep moving forward till we eventually get 6 passes.
Yeah, it's funny that whenever people encounter their fail is when the second guessing and the self-doubt really starts to kick in. So, we've seen every permutation there is, right? We've seen people go 5 for 5, using our materials. They pass 5 in a row. And on the 6th one, they fail. And it's usually PDD because that's the one they save to the end. And that fail hits them so hard that puts them in this wave of self-doubt and second guessing that we have to coach them to constantly, to conscious turn off. Other people, they'll right out of the gate, they'll fail their first test. That'll put them in this tailspin of self-doubt, and then that'll affect them through all 6 exams. But it's the fail that seems to really start this process of second guessing, this idea of I need to re-examine and re-question every answer, which generally you shouldn't do. You don't have time to do, and as we've seen anecdotally, tends to lead you to a fail anyway.
And what the fail does when we fail, which we will, most candidates aren't going 6 for 6, and that should not be your goal. Your goal is to get licensed. I don't care if it takes me 98 exams, I'm getting my license. That's the attitude we want. And that person will get licensed, right? But if you go into this, I'm going to do it in 6 for 6, well, you're going to hit a road bump. And that road bump might throw you off enough that you walk away. And that we don't want, right? But what I was going to say, the fail, it hurts our ego, and then that's when we start to have that self-doubt and questioning our things, and then that translates into second guessing, the next time we take another exam, because now we're feeling pretty insecure and we're feeling like the fail we just did, it's because we don't know anything. And the truth is we were closer than we think. So we have to still trust our gut, even though it didn't get us over the finish line the last attempt. It doesn't mean we need to throw everything away.
Which by the way, misses the entire point of the exams, which is to essentially forge you into a professional. And by definition, professionals don't let their feelings or their self-doubt or their insecurities or their fears or their ego get in the way. Like, think of yourself like a doctor or an attorney, right? We all three professions have a standard of care. And so how I respond in a given circumstance or situation should be basically exactly the same as any other licensed professional given the same circumstances and situation, right? But yet, because you're taking these tests alone, because you're studying generally alone, you're kind of left with this whirlwind of self-doubt and fear and insecurity that fuels this second-guessing game that always ends badly.
Let's talk about a strategy for the second guessing, because if you're listening, you might be thinking, okay, I get it, but how do I actually make that happen where I don't second guess? So this is what you can do. And this is a strategy of how we process the questions that we get in marking. So it goes hand in hand, marking. So what we want to do is really the only questions we're marking are like the math ones or the really wordy ones or the really dense ones that just might take a little more time than normal to solve or to arrive at the answer. We're not marking because we don't know the answer. If it's a short enough question, pick the answer and move on. So at the end of any of these exams, you might have, 12 marked. You shouldn't have 25 marked, right? So we got 12 marked. Now we're like, okay, I got most of them done. So now I can go back and kind of focus on these ones. And by the way, those other ones that I've already, answered, I'm not going back to them. I mean, suppose if you want to review them, but no, just they're done. Once you leave a question, it's done unless it's marked. So I think the marking and the second guessing go hand in hand, and I want to get your thoughts on the marking aspect of this, Eric.
No, you nailed it exactly. It's a mindset shift on your approach to the test, right? And we cover this in the coaching at length, but we want you to be marking for time management, not marking because of doubt, right?
Yes,
it's a very big difference, right?
Exactly.
And if you're marking for time management is a form of triage. So you're like, okay, you're really trying to rack up as many points as you can in the time provided. That's your mindset on the test, right? You're given limited time. You're only given 100, 85 or 100 possible, questions or points. Each question is the same. They're all worth 1 point. So rack up as many points as you can. So by marking, you're like, okay, this is going to take me 10 minutes. Let me mark it and save it for the end. If I can do it, I'd rather in that 10 minutes rack up 10 easier points or shorter questions. So marking for time is a key to stopping the second guessing. Besides, if you're really unsure, you can leave it blank, and then the test, of course, shows you which you've left incomplete, right? But marking for time versus marking for doubt is already a much bigger winning strategy. So you're spot on there.
Well, I think too, just as a licensed professional, just those words that you said, marking for time management. Well, that's what a licensed professional would do. Marking for doubt. That's not really what a licensed professional would do. It's like, yes, we may not know the answer, but pick one in that moment and roll with it and have confidence and just move on. This strategy, it might take a few exams before you see the benefit of it, but I guarantee you will absolutely 100% see the benefit of it, of just taking them as they come. And even if I'm not sure, just doing it and moving on to the next one and forgetting about that. And one of the classic things we hear, which sort of drives me nuts, but again, I get it. It's normal, but we have to avoid that is, well, I'm going to mark it in case something comes up later that will give me more information to help me answer it. That strategy is flawed on so many levels.
Oh yeah, that's a big one that we hear all the time, isn't it? I'm going to learn something by taking the test, or as if I'm going to study while taking the test at the same time. Because if answer 30, 32, I'm still unsure of, and by the time I get to question 68, it's going to teach me something that's going to force me to go back and change that answer. First of all, if you're doing that, I would argue you've already failed. You're already so disconnected from the purpose of the test that you should have gone in better prepared, really, and not to scold you, but it's a failed strategy. It also doesn't work, right? We've now seen thousands upon thousands of people tell us, yeah, I tried this and it didn't work. Yeah, because it doesn't make any sense. So bad decision 1 is marking for doubt. Bad decision number 2 is essentially trying to learn something while you're taking the test, or use answer 68 to answer 32. It doesn't work.
And all of that bleeds into the second guessing. So if you adopt the strategy that we just said a few minutes ago and just mark only for time management, that in and of itself is how you get over second guessing, because you won't second guess. There's not an opportunity to, and you've trained your brain to not do that. Again, it's going to probably take a couple exams before you actually see the benefit of that. But I think also what comes with that is relief. Like, oh my God, I don't have to go back and review my answers. I don't have to second guess. I can feel confident and I can trust my gut, which is what we should be doing as licensed professionals anyway. Even sometimes we're wrong. So what? We made a decision and we're moving on.
Yeah, well, the mindset shift is, I think most people go in, I expect to pass all 6 on the first try. When I don't, my ego will be bruised. I expect to, try to get 100% right. And those two things are setting you up for disappointment and failure. And instead, the mindset is, I'm going to take one test at a time, right? And then just keep going and then fit in retakes as I go. And my goal isn't to get 100% right. That's a lot of pressure. My goal is to rack up enough points to pass. Very different mindset. And a much easier one if you think about it.
Alrighty, and that is going to do us our time.
Wait. There's. I just remembered it. There's another great.
All right, we're over time, so go ahead.
The third bad judgment that people make is they tell me this, and I cringe every time they do it. They say, I deliberately did not take my break because I didn't want the questions to lock. I wanted the freedom to go back and change and second guess. So they mark way too many questions. They think they're going to learn something in future questions, and then they skip taking a break and turn it into this crazy endurance test of, I'm going to go all 4 or 5 hours with no break, and I'm going to hold in my pee just so I can go back and change answers, which ironically is going to cause me to fail anyway. So don't skip your break. Use your break judiciously. But yes, of course, it does lock any questions you've already seen.
Again, I'll go back to the licensed professional. A licensed professional is not going to sit there for 4 hours and not take a break if it's given to them. They're like, oh yeah, let's everybody. I mean, you usually don't do a 4-hour meeting, or if you do, you have some breaks. That's what licensed professionals do. So yeah, let's start acting like licensed professionals during this exam process. And with that said, we're over time. I know it's always hard to keep these things under 15 minutes. So on behalf of Eric, my name is David, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the ARE Podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.